That was so much better than my introduction. You know, it's incredible when folks have so many titles. And in the film industry, the television industry, titles can be a little amorphous. So I'd love to ask, Alan, you first, since you're further away. If you were to describe what you do as a creative, how would you describe that without using your titles?
You just made the question hard at the end there. Because I was going to say, before you got to the final part of your question, was that all I really do is direct. Everything else is just filler to get me a chance to direct. So the writing and the producing is all just an excuse to get to directing. But before I was a director, I was studying history, and I've never stopped loving that. And I think the impulse is the same. It's to delve into human behavior, human psychology, and try and explore it and say things about it. And then what I do is try and explore human behavior with imagery and stuff.
No, I think that's great, and it helps explain when you look at your IMDb and you see things like Sex and the City next to Sopranos, next to Game of Thrones, because it does boil down to telling the human story.
It was great. It was a strange time to be directing Sex and the City and Sopranos simultaneously in the same studio in New York, and we would run back and forth between the two.
You get whiplash?
I got whiplash, and I screwed up at least once where I did a shot in Sopranos that clearly should have been a Sex and the City shot. And I think I was just tired or something, and David Chase took me aside and said, "You know that shot where you?" And I said, "Yeah, I know." It was way too zingy. It had having too much fun being a camera. But apart from that, it was like you say, it's two very different languages, but both exploring human behavior with brilliant writers behind them. So the same task, really. Just have to remember not to screw it up with the camera.
Speaking of camera and camera direction, what about you, Jane? How would you describe what you do without saying storyboard artist or supervising director?
I help visualize action sequences for animation and live action.
Wow.
Yeah, but way more than that. I mean, you're not just doing action. You're telling stories. You're building characters. You're expressing emotional things. It's not just. You're not just the action lady.
Oh, yeah. It's fine. They're not being cute. You know, there's a quote from, I believe it's from the Vanity Fair article, that says, the same feeling as when you catch Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon and think, wow, that's epic, or wow, that was complicated, or wow, that was an experience, and you don't think of it as animation, you just think of it as a really strong story. And I think that sums up what both of you kind of just laid out, is what you do. You build, create, and bring to life these really strong stories. For those of us who love Sex and the City, Carrie has a strong story. I'm a Samantha girl, also a strong story. And when you think of stuff, and we were talking about this, the fight scene from Thor Ragnarok, and what were your instructions for that again?
I would love to just take that question and run with it, but I didn't direct Thor Ragnarok.
Oh, not you, this one.
Okay, good.
No. Well, I will come back to Thor.
I thought you were making eye contact with me when you asked that. No.
Wait, no, I work.
All right.
See, I'm gonna lean. Now I know I have to lean in.
Okay, this is why it's so complicated, because I've been at Marvel for so long that I've gone through so many Thors. I met Alan on Thor 2.
To clarify, yes.
I met him on Thor 2, and I did all the action sequences on 2, and then other Marvel movies, and then I ended up in Thor 3, Ragnarok, and usually, maybe it's a secret, but not anymore as I tell it to you guys, we don't get scripts because there are none. And there are cue cards up there that says Thor fights Hulk in Colosseum. That's all I got.
They really laid that out for you there.
So part of our job is also to understand story and how to knit that story. So I have to say, well, what act is it? Oh, there's this story actor, okay. And then like, what other characters are we introducing? Oh, we're introducing these characters. Do they know each other? I mean, because in the comic book, they do know each other, and here, they don't know each other. Because I also have a comic book background, and I'm a total geek and nerd about Thor. That's the first comic book I collected. So I know Thor. So it was very easy to get back into that realm. So, yeah, so
I love that.
you have to specify which.
I do. This is the challenge of having two brilliant people on the stage who have worked on so many things, including things together, right? This vast world of production and collaboration, you now do work on projects together and your own separate projects. What does, and this is specifically for the students here tonight, but some of us who are also trying to juggle our lives, what does a typical day look like for the both of you?
Now?
I mean, it really varies, obviously, from thing to thing. I dragged Jane into House of the Dragon, and so we were in London, and a typical day was like going on location to see what where the dragons were going to fight, and then arguing over multiple meals about what the dragon should be doing, and swapping inspirational images back and forth, and watching a lot of Bird of Prey documentary footage. So that's sort of our live action collaboration, but recently we're doing Blue Eye Samurai, which is really her world. She dragged me into that. And
Also congratulations.
That's sitting at a lot of desks with a lot of Zoom meetings is what that is.
Yeah, me going, are you done with that? Are you done with that? We need to move forward. Yeah, that scene done? No, but I met Alan on Thor 2, and then we fell in love.
This side of the audience is great.
Alan, they're here for it.
And then basically Alan took me out of the Marvel cycle.
Well, she should take more credit because I was leaving the Marvel cycle and I was going off to do a different big stupid movie. And you
I
came.
love that big
Thank you.
stupid
Thank
movie.
you. I mean,
I have seen it so many
Terminator
times.
I
Genesis.
respect you for that. But Jane made the decision to leave Marvel and come with me, so that was a big.
Right, because I thought, oh my god, my boyfriend's about to direct the biggest summer action sequence and he doesn't have a action storyboard team. So I left. And ever since that happened, so we've just been kind of like a twofer. Like you hire him, you get me, or you hire me, you get him. Because
Everybody should hear that who's hiring for directors for big, stupid movies. You get them both. But seriously, that's a great segue into my next question. Bringing larger than life stories to television, whether they include dragons or not. There has been a transition in the last decade, in the last 5 years, right? Expanding the possibility of what serialized television could be, but also so many, if you watch the first Terminator versus Terminator Genesis, the technology really evolves. What has this transition looked like for your work, and what excites you about these expanded possibilities? And I do mean more than just AI, to be clear.
Yeah, Jane and I have not really experienced AI very much yet. I mean, we know it's coming, but it hasn't really changed the way we work at all yet. But I mean, certainly what's happened is the explosion of visual effects, which is a good and a bad thing in some ways. I mean, even you don't have to go very far apart, but like season 1 of Game of Thrones and later seasons of Game of Thrones, we went from having zero money and visual effects were very hard to pull off to it being, just ubiquitous. Like, not just the big dragon flying scenes, but every shot is being sort of tweaked by visual effects. And that's sort of a letdown in a way, because I think it makes filmmaking slightly less rigorous, because there's a we can fix it later attitude that creeps in. But mostly it's a positive thing. The tools that are available are becoming more affordable, so that your imagination can really go bananas. There's no way in the world we could have done a a dragon battle like we just did in House of the Dragon in the early seasons of Game of Thrones. We just couldn't pull it off, but now it's quite doable. It's not to do it.
Jane, I imagine that allows things that you can imagine in your brain and put on a storyboard to come to life more.
Because I came out of animation, it wasn't that much of a transition for me. Because in the animated world, you could put a 12-foot green guy bashing in a building, and that's like Tuesday. But in order to bring that into live action and marry it with live action that's what was exciting. Like, you know, the seeing something so possibly real that you can believe it is the amazing part of what effects and technology is bringing to the table now.
And one thing that we talk about a lot, and Jane is particularly active about, is, you know, you can do almost anything now, and yet you really have to stay rigorous and not do anything. You can't have omniscient cameras that can go anywhere because it starts to break the reality of it. So if you're shooting a dragon battle, yes, you can do almost anything. You can build the dragons, but you should really confine your camera. It should feel like it's, you know, on a different dragon watching the action. It shouldn't be a magic camera that flies around and sees everything. And you should limit yourself and feel the constraints of live action even when you're doing something highly visual that affects.
Yeah, and I think that goes to wanting to feel something. When the camera is too loosey-goosey and wants to be everywhere, you lose the feeling of the story that you're watching. So making sure that the camera feels like somebody is, you know, holding the camera is...
Even when it's a virtual creature, a
Right,
virtual environment
right.
with a virtual camera, you still have to remember that, you know, there's a sweating person risking his life to get the shot.
Right, and the
You should feel
little
that.
nuances that happens during a camera move is the thing that tells you if somebody's holding the camera right there, right?
I think you both brought up a great example when we were chatting prior to this, which is the final scene where one of the episodes of Game of Thrones, when we have the dragon, the ice dragon, and what does that mean to have this field of dead walkers like coming across, and where can you put that camera with those limitations, right?
Yeah, that was the first time you and I did Game of Thrones together. Was the
Yeah.
ice battle. And
Yeah, I just want to tell a little story. So we had this like ice island thing that they were building on set. I was so excited. I said, "Oh, I want to do a oneer, you know, when these guys are around there and we go around the heroes." And then one day I went out to where they were building the thing, and I realized, oh my God, the ice island that they're building is so like rough and stepped that a cameraman would have died if they had to like walk backwards and try to do a oneer. So then I ran back to him. I'm like, "Oh my God, we have a problem. We can't do a oneer." And so it became a tour, right?
it became a tour, but you know, we
There was a
solved
cut.
it. Yeah.
But yeah, that was like hundreds of White Walkers, you know, walking along the thing, and also half of it was filmed in Iceland, and then the other half was filmed in the back lot, and
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about that show was the scale. So we went to Iceland and did the walking and talking bits, but when it came to the Ice Lake battle and the dying dragon and so on, we were in a quarry outside Belfast with huge set construction. We've all built sets before, but I'd never built a landscape before. They actually were creating, you know, the hills, the ice, the island itself was built, and so it was a great place to shoot because it was like being, you know, in the real location. But when something happened, like the dragon died and went down to the ice, you know, it's pavement, so there's nothing to shoot, and you have to hang on to the emotional thing you're tracking. So Jane was the one who invented. I don't know if you guys have seen that show. That the dragon gets killed by the bad guy and crashes into the ice and sinks very slowly down into the ice. And there's something about the way he slides back in and sort of flops in, and his wings coming after him. That was a Jane Wu invention. It was one of those things of, you know, the dragon dies.
but I that is from my animation background of knowing how to tell a character, you know, through animation. and I really looked at the dragon as a character. And I think one of the things Alan and I have always said about the dragons is they need to feel like a character. They're not just this big, scary thing. They need to have personalities, right?
And that started with, early on with David Benioff and Dan Weiss were very, again, rigorous about dragons being real creatures. So not this nonsense of a four-legged creature with wings, because that doesn't exist anywhere in nature. It has to be, something derived from physiology. So it's a two-legged creature where the arms are the wings. And that was just the beginning of saying, no, these are real creatures. How would they really behave? What are their emotional lives? How do they bond? And when they die, what do they feel? So like in that moment that Jane created where the dragon sinks into the waves, we also made sure that we heard the other dragon screaming because, that dragon just watched its sibling die. So it's not just a flying weapon. It's a tragic character too.
And I hope that y'all are hearing like the immense amount of intention and forward planning, but also storytelling at like every single part of the process. I'm kind of curious, outside these kind of complex mechanics, the science, the tech, what do you believe is like the perfect, near perfect recipe for good storytelling?
If we knew that,
we'd all be rich. No, but
you take that one, honey.
He gives me all the hard stuff. I think it's a combination of authenticity and being able to tell something so authentic and so singular that it becomes universal, because we all have that type of story to tell. And I'm very happy to be working in this industry at a time when the audiences can smell inauthenticity in a story and want that care that it takes to create this world or create this character.
It is interesting. So, obviously filmmaking changes all the time and tastes change all the time, but one of the things that is this bar that keeps rising is what the audience will accept as authentic, like you said. And if you look back at 10 years ago, what passes for a fight scene or what passes for a fantastical creature, or the audience was willing to sort of pretend maybe more, but they keep raising their aesthetic judgment in a way of what you're doing. But the main point I think you're making is not so much getting it right in that way, but the trick to what wonderful thing the story can do is it tells a hyper-specific, hyper-grounded, hyper-truthful to a certain reality story that through its reality becomes, or through its authenticity becomes universal for everybody else. So there's movies that we love, like Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is a movie that we have to be crazy about. One of the things that makes it so wonderful is that it nails not just the fantastical stuff, but the household of the family. It seems so real and so observed. And that was a great experience to see that movie, fall in love with it, and then see it be embraced by the world and go global, even though it's such a hyper-specific, take.
I think that's something a lot of folks also experienced with Interview with a Vampire as well. Alan I just want to let you know, Alan did not escape that question. There was another question underneath that one specifically meant for Alan. So Alan, you have this reputation for taking big swings. Some would say tough choices. At times you sacrifice people's favorite characters. All jokes aside, the way you've done it does not lose an audience. The audience stays. Which means you have a confidence in knowing that is, I'm also being very generous. No one really has the confidence to know what an audience is going to do. Maybe. But what draws you to stories like that? And how do you approach bringing these stories to life?
I think you're referring to the fact that I gradually became somebody who killed beloved characters over and over and over again. And when you're an episodic director and you realize you get to kill somebody, a character that's been set up for a long time, you realize you're very lucky because it's going to be a huge emotional investment for the audience. And it was just random at first, and then it sort of seemed to become a thing that I was being given to do.
The hitman of Hollywood.
Yeah.
You're like, Alan can do it.
But I killed Caesar in Rome. I killed Hickok in Deadwood. I killed Christopher Mazzanti in The Sopranos. I think killed him.
You did the last.
And then most recently killing, Queen That Never Was and her dragon. So I had to think about. First of all, it's going to get attention, and that's wonderful for a director. But there is this. No matter how different the deaths are, the audience reaction is always pretty much the same. They hate your fucking guts for killing off the person that they love, but they love it. They also are, really embrace it. And I thought about that, and I think it's partly because that's a way for us to deal with death, is to, we all know it's a truth, but this is a way to have a really emotional experience to it because you're bonded to these characters, but also it's kind of over there, it's kind of safe, it's a fiction, it's, so you get to sort of experience it and go through some of the emotions that come with it, but you are fundamentally safe. It's not happening to you or your loved one. But so I think we have a human compulsion to sort of replay this experience of a horrible death, tragic death. It's just a way of sort of, exercising something we know is true of our existence that we have conflicted feelings about. I don't think about all this, heady stuff when I'm directing these scenes. It's just, you find interesting ways to kill people. And by far the most emotional thing is, killing a character is one thing, but killing anything remotely like a puppy is much more dangerous. So killing a dragon is a big deal. You don't get forgiven for that.
So both of you have had these incredible journeys as creators across the board, genre, platform, medium. Is this where you thought you would be when you were starting out?
I thought I'd be a famous fashion designer, and I don't know how I got here. My formal training is, I'm supposed to be a fashion designer or a costume designer, but I think it was my work and my interest and love and passion for comics that I wanted to tell stories. And by accident, I got into the animation industry not knowing what the industry was, and I got hired as a cleanup, and I thought they wanted me to clean up bathrooms. That's how little I knew of animation, but in 3 years, I was running Men in Black. So it was understanding the process and really liking the process, and I kind of liken it to being able to play an instrument well, and then coming back and keep practicing at it, and now I do play an instrument really well that I never thought I'd play.
Yes, you have your version of the story, and what strikes me is we've been in various groups where I've discovered how common this is for people who thought they were going to do something else and then wound up doing this instead. And so for me, I was an academic. I was getting a PhD in history. I wanted to teach, and then had a moment where I sort of felt claustrophobic and jumped ship and went to film school instead, and that led to what I've done ever since. And so no, I certainly didn't start off thinking I would wind up here. And I'm not sure where I wound up, because I, on the one hand, I'm very grateful for all the things I've been able to work on and do, but it's light years away from being a waiter, which is what I was doing when I was finishing film school, but it's also light years away from the aspirations that I still carry of, being a filmmaker who gets to write and direct his own things and gets to refine his own voice. So I'm somewhere in some. I'm grateful that I'm somewhere in some middle zone, between aspirations and I'm so much better off than I feared I would be coming out of film school. But I'm very aware of, there's a lot more to be done.
And we will get to that question also, because I know folks are curious, but I also love tapping in, particularly after we've done these roundtables where folks have talked about these unexpected changes and turns. You talked about fashion design, but you also have, you've mentioned that you're a comic book head. You also have a background in martial arts. Like, for you, Alan, we've talked about the fact that you had a video camera, right? And you loved film. You loved film as, a young person. How many times have you been able to tap into things that you never thought would be useful, in this career you're in now? from where you've come from. Because I think a lot of folks don't realize that the things they've learned, the things they've grown up with, you've talked about a lot of your background that you were able to bring into Blue Eye Samurai. Talk to a little bit about bringing yourself into your work.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I never thought of filmmaking as something I could do, but I did deeply love movies, and so my friends in our teens were going off and playing sports or being in bands or something, and I just started going to this art house theater and watching all the movies I could watch. It never occurred to me I could actually make them. I never had a video camera. I'm so damn old. I had like a Super 8 camera and a 16 millimeter camera.
Yes.
But same thing. I just couldn't wait to shoot something and see how it would look, and so this kind of hunger, passion that you never know why it's going to land in some place. Some people feel that way about sports. Some people feel that way about music. For me, it was just movie imagery. I think obviously once you start working, all you do is draw on yourself. Jane has all these other skills like martial arts, which I don't have. But I think the fact that I studied history and loved it so much is part of how I approach everything. I think growing up in multiple different sort of settings, like I was born in the States, then lived in Canada, and then in Italy, and then New York. And I think sort of being a kind of outsider frequently affects how I tell stories and stuff. So I think you can't help but work with whatever you've been given. And to go back to James' point, if you can really nail something specific to your own experience, that's the thing that will go universal.
Yeah, and I think for me, Blue Eye Samurai was a show that used about 95% of who I am. And I think once in a lifetime, a project will come when you get to use all of yourself. And it's been an incredible experience to go, oh, okay, so now my fashion side of it and costume history side nerd gets to come out and play. And of course, oh, now my martial arts side gets to come out and play, and my storyboarding, everything. So
And your deep-seated need for revenge.
yes, and revenge on all.
I'm gonna need you to get a much better evil laugh. We're gonna work on it.
Yeah, that's why I do have my villain outfit on today. But and it was when Blue Eye Samurai first came to my table, I said no, I didn't want to work on it because I didn't want to come back to animation. I was happy in live action because it's part of the voice that I have in storytelling. Because in the West, our animation storytelling is usually younger, and also comedic, and I'm not funny and I can't do young, and I can't do jokes. I can't do a gag in a room. I hate that. So I'm really kind of useless in animation because I don't know how, like Tinkerbell can't do a badass beat down on the rest of her friends. But that's the stuff that I do, and so.
But now I want to see it. What if Tinkerbell was in roller derby?
Let's pitch it.
I'm done.
But so when they said no, it's adult animation, my ears perked up, and this was also right during the time when my family in Asia was telling me that there was no more toilet paper, and that they were locked down. And I thought, well, if this virus jumps to to us, all physical production would be shut down. Yeah, guess what? I think animation could be done remotely. So then I started talking to them, and but still didn't want to go back into animation. But again, when you read the script and when you read everything and you go, God, I know exactly how to do this, and it's me, I had to take it. And I couldn't stand the thought of somebody else doing it wrong. So I had to.
So I'm curious for both of you who are like true lovers of specific genres, true lovers of film. Are there? And I believe Alan, you studied under Martin Scorsese? Yeah, I'm just gonna throw that out there. Do you have particular favorites or inspirations? Because I truly feel like both of you are just constantly inspired by real life.
That's fine. I mean, I have sort of a canon of 10 movies that were always my sort of favorite movies that got in there early and don't go away. So I consciously drawn inspiration from other movies. There's a movie called The American Fan by Wim Wenders that I've stolen from 1,000 times. There's a couple of Fellini films that I steal from routinely. But Tarkovsky, I tried to steal from him. But actually, I did one shot in Sex and the City that was stolen from Tarkovsky, which is the most ridiculous cultural mashup you can imagine. It had to do with how the camera moved and how the light shifted.
And what episode is this?
I think she's breaking up with one of her boyfriends. I can't remember.
So you just described the entire. Oh, yeah.
I mean, I draw a lot of inspiration from the movies that I love, that I find haunting and that really get in my head. But you can get inspiration everywhere. I had the chance to talk to one of my huge heroes, one of the guys that made me want to make movies, David Lynch, who unfortunately passed away, as we all know. And he's funny. When you ask him about, I thought I'd seen connections between his work and Tarkovsky, and I tried to sort of ask him about that, and he said, I'm not really a film buff. And he says, he says, or in public, that his inspiration is like, buildings and things. He derives his inspiration from mood piece things, moods he feels in other fields or another media or another experience. He doesn't really draw from movies itself. It's fine.
I love that gives people permission not to go on one singular path. What about you, Chang?
I think for young people who are into this, and this, don't think that's not going to play a part eventually in things that you do, and they're not a waste of time. Because my parents were yelling at me because I was reading comic books, right? I took martial arts. Why are you taking martial arts? And, my love for film and watching movies constantly, those all do come into play. And if you are passionate about something, that's following what you naturally do well. Because if you're not passionate about it, you're not going to spend that 10,000 hours doing it and not get good at it, right? Did I just lecture everyone?
I think the word was inspire and give great advice. So that being said, I feel like both of you love a challenge. You love a good story. Is there a type, genre, tone, medium that you would love to particularly tell a story in? Do you have a dream story you have yet to tell without giving away any IP that you might be working on?
I've got 3 or 4, and I mean, there are certain stories I'm drawn to and tones I'm drawn to. One reason I love Scorsese so much is because his combination of really accurately observed humanity and violence and absurdity and humor all balled up together, and that's sort of the tone that I love the most. But in terms of a genre story I want to tell, I have a Western that I'm dying to make that may or may not see the light of day, but and I think most directors want to do a Western at some point. It's because the imagery is so powerful, and it's a field that's been mined so much that you have to sort of find a way to go into it afresh. And so I have this project I'm trying to get made by Ray Fiennes, who said he wants to play the villain, which would help. So that's one.
It doesn't hurt.
And I guess the bigger dream I chase still goes back to film school, which is to finally write something more personal than that and make that movie.
That's the hardest thing, is to make a personal story, right?
Well, for me it is, but I've only done it once. My student film from NYU was a very personal story about not breaking up with my girlfriend, and it's in a way the most personal thing I ever did. But
did your girlfriend see the
worse than that, she played herself in the movie.
Well, we see how that ended up.
Please don't make a movie about.
So trying to find a mature, late in life experience that's as personal as that is the holy grail for me to sort of try and tell a story like that again.
I love Westerns too, but I think on my side of it, I do want to talk and tell stories about the Asian American experience, because I think it's so singular to what I know I feel. the first film I've ever seen was that hit me was The Last Emperor, because there was a bunch of Asian people on the film that didn't look goofy, that had so much regalness to it, and I just thought, there's somebody that looked like me on the screen, and it was this wonderful story, and that's what I've been chasing. So like, at any time there was an Asian American kind of theme, like Jackie Chan, I wanted to be in it. I know how to tell that story. That's something I've been wanting to do. A dream project that I have would be, I want to retell The Good Earth, the one that won in 1934, and cast it with Asian people.
This is a great room to pitch that in. She'll be available to talk to everyone at dinner. So I am looking for Patrick and may I break into Q&A? Oh, I forgot. We've got one more thing.
Well, we brought something to show, but only if it was going to be useful in the conversation. It's pretty. We have some of Jane's boards, and we can show the previous.
I think one of the things folks are always interested in, because y'all, please go to her website. It is total fun just going down and clicking each scene. Is seeing how the sausage is made. So I think that would yeah.
So yeah, we'll tee it up. This is from House of Dragons, and this was the what?
Oh yeah, you're right.
Okay, you do it.
No, go ahead, keep team.
Okay. And this
You're
was
such a team. It's so good.
this was a sequence, the big dragon fight, and I think we had 2 months to work on this, to design it, board it, and
this was another case where we knew it was supposed to be a big deal, but literally the script was things like, the dragons fight.
yeah, that was it. That's all we got.
So we got much more specific about the characters of the dragons and the relationships to their riders and levels of skill between the dragons. And we spent probably the most fun and rewarding thing was watching footage of birds of prey and how they engage in midair. So Jane and I went off on our own and boarded this whole thing. So this is these boards. It's a huge sequence. So this is like midway through. This is the arrival of the biggest dragon, Vagar, and you'll see Jane's boards are singular to me. They're very efficient. They don't bog down in details, but they absolutely tell you everything you sort of need to know about the camera and the action. My favorite story about Jane's boards is when I first brought her into Game of Thrones. There was a very talented visual effects guy, and he looked at her boards and said, "Oh, I guess we can use these." And prior to that, she worked with Joss Whedon, and he referred to her boards as chicken scratches, I think,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. But
I
a
have
lot of people look at boards and they're used to seeing they're used to seeing a lot more details or pretty pictures, but what Jane does is pare it down to what you need to know, and you can feel the story in the camera.
I mean, my whole thing is like when you look at storyboards and when you pitch to a director, he doesn't have time to, what am I looking at? So I had to be very clear and concise. So that's why each dragon, each character are color coded. So when you look at them, you know exactly which dragon you're looking at, because I also don't have time to draw the dragon as they look because they're really hard to draw.
And I kind of want to pinpoint for those who are comic book heads and who do panels or animation, like, talk to folks about your process in including the camera tilts and the POV and the angles, because that's also really important, because you are not just saying, "Oh, I'm putting a dragon in a storyboard."
Yeah,
you're moving it.
In the script, it just says the dragons fight, right? So then it's discussing with understanding the director's vision and what he wants it. And he said it needs to feel like a nuclear warfare in the sky. So, okay, then what would that look like? And that got me to thinking about what would that look like grounded? And so then I said we should look at birds of prey, and so we looked at a bunch of birds of prey and how they fight in the sky. And then add that to the fact that they can breathe fireballs. And so,
And I just want to say, are we saying birds of prey as in animals or birds of prey as in fighter jets?
No, animals.
I'm just going to make sure.
Thank you for clarifying. We learned this thing that when they engage in midair, one will frequently turn upside down, so they can engage talon to talon, and they become this kind of death spiral down to the ground. So we created that with dragons the size of 747s. And it became,
So both.
what we were trying to build was we were trying to create the nuclear event in the story, because very much the subplot was about unleashing tactical nuclear weapons for the first time, and it should feel that devastating. So we built this moment of two dragons engaging, and when they release, the biggest one, Vagar, hits the ground so hard that he creates a shockwave that knocks everybody off the battlefield. It knocks out our main character, and everything after that point is a different world. So that was our sort of nuclear moment, and then we sort of rebuilt the story around that, with that being the sort of tentpole moment. Everything else had to sort of serve that moment and reduce its scale to make that big turning point.
yeah.
So
and
this is the sort of setup to that moment. Now,
so this is the start of the nuclear fireball in the sky. But then I also had to make 2 or 3 origami dragons to then show. I'm like, they go like this.
Yeah, because we can take all kinds of credit for creating the sequence and designing the story, but there's a huge amount of work. Once we say, okay, so these 2 dragons do this and they spiral down, then an army of people come in and actually do the hard work of the muscles and the sinews and what
Right.
the mechanics of the triple axle turn with 2 lizards.
Are you also that animated in the pitch? Like, is it like the dragons do
Well,
this?
that's that big tilt down of the
So I feel
fireball
like you are.
in the sky.
Some people are great pitch artists. Brian Andrews is a great storyboard pitch artist. Jane is less great at pitch.
I'm like, what? Look at the boards.
Yeah, the boards. What do you? Yeah, this was my favorite image with the spiraling down of the. But so those are the boards, and then the next step that happens creatively is we go to the previs, which then takes those boards and turns them into crude, computer-generated visuals, so that people
Don't say crude. There might be previous people.
really nice.
They're awesome, workable layouts of how this should go.
Right.
So this was the sequence. You start with boards, and then you get into previs. And it's, anyone who's seen the episode will see that this is mostly what we shot. Things have been moved around a little bit, but
And the previs is there to make sure that the boards do translate in the dimensional world, and making sure that there indeed is enough time and frames to account for the animation and the visual effects.
And the reason I say crude was because when you storyboard, it looks sort of like poetry, and then nothing is worse than actors in previs. It's really painful to watch an emotional moment going by when you've got a guy who's gliding across the ground and his face is not moving. So, storyboards are sort of more elegant than.
Thank you.
The irony for those of us who have been playing video games for a long time,
Get used to it.
this is better than some of the video games we played in the 90s.
So then Alan has to do a lot of the shooting around that to get the actors to do that, and then marry that with VFX.
Case like this, we're in a location, a place called Bourne Wood. Obviously, the dragon was not there, but this shot, we have air blasters on the day to make the ground react to his breath and stuff. Wonderful actor Tom Glenn Carney was my favorite actor in the whole show. So, anything else you said about this? So this is basically the roadmap for everybody. Every department has to be this helps them know what they're responsible for.
Right, because this communicates across all departments so that they know what their bits and pieces are come day of the shoot. But in animation, that's basically this is a rough layout, and you take it into animation. That's my squiggly storyboards.
Back to Jane's boards. But we're still waiting for the nuclear moment. Hang on.
But yeah, this took us about 2 months to put together, and it was hard, but fun.
We can just let that play.
Yeah.
If anybody has any questions, then we can.
All right. So we do not have the rest of the night, and I will warn all of you. Your questions that you are asking are between this moment and food. I want you to keep that in mind. All right, we have our first question. But I am insistent, I have one instruction. You have to tell us who you are and then ask your question.
Hi, I'm Matt Yankee. Jane, you've used live action to inform animation, and you've used animation to inform live action, and you guys are in a couple. How have you guys sort of found the middle ground of that to tell the story the best we can?
You don't see our fights at home, do you?
We tried to go out and have dinner and not talk about work. It doesn't really work. But no, that's a great way to put it, is that I've sort of come to depend on animation to refine my live action work. And Jane, her brilliant contribution was to use not just stunt viz and live action tools to do her animation, but to bring a kind of live action sensibility into animation. So I think that's sort of lucky for both of us that I'm more grounded in live action, she's more grounded in animation, but we sort of meet in the middle and we're ripping each other off all the time.
All right. Yusa, in the back.
Hey, my name's Kyle Higgins. I'm from a writing and directing background and a lot of comic books as well.
Hello.
Both mediums have a different relationship with spontaneity in the creative process. And I would love to hear how you both talk about not only the importance of it, but the challenges with navigating new ideas in very rigid pipelines that you have, whether it's in traditional animation or the pipeline with VFX heavy live action.
It's a really good question. Okay. One of the things I love about live action is that spontaneity is a part of the process constantly, and some of the worst things that happen to you, but by far some of the best things that happen to you are these moments that sparks that fly when you're shooting or when you're creating together. I've experienced moments of spontaneity, so to speak, in the much slower pipeline of animation. I mean, an example would be like when we were doing Thor. There was one of these typically written Marvel scenes, they fight, and the storyboard artist who came in created a moment where Thor got his hand chopped off, and we saw this. It wasn't in the script. It wasn't. Nobody had thought of it. He just had that idea that night, sort of. And so he created the boards. And our first reaction was, "Oh shit, can we do that? Check the lore. Are we okay?" But it was in a moment of spontaneity, kind of. And so yes, it's a grinding process. And a year later, it was in the movie. But there was that moment of creative spark that that was untethered to anything else. So I think it does exist.
In animation, there are no spontaneity, and the pipeline is extremely rigid, and that's why when I started Blue Eye Samurai in Netflix, I said I wanted to break that pipeline because it just can't be done this way. But it is more of a challenge to do that. So I think the idea is just to do what that medium does the best, which is composition, which is performance. I think the spontaneity comes more in the idea of, oh, you know what we can do is, chop off his hands. But not in the performance, but it's just in the idea of it all.
Yeah, so there are virtues to both. I mean, spontaneity is wonderful and I have a romantic attachment to it, but it's really great to not have to fight with actors about blocking. And in animation, they just go wherever you want them to.
What the cost?
Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions? Have they been that amazing? Oh, there we go.
As someone who loves what you both do and aspires to do what you do, if you could go back in time and tell your younger selves, knowing that this is where you end up, what's a good piece of advice that you would give yourselves? Sorry.
This is why I didn't ask that question.
I mean, obviously, I think everybody would have a different reaction to it, and it's based on what you think was your weak spot or your strong spot. The positive way, I would try and tell my younger self to have more faith and trust in the process and where things were going to go. But the more negative way to put it, because that's what I'm drawn to, would be to be less fearful and to reach farther as a result. I mean, I came out of film school. Nobody in my class got a job in as a director. It's a tough line. So mostly you're being driven by fear in the early stages. But if I could go back and say, just try and follow your voice more and don't be so quite so scared.
I think for me, being an immigrant and being female in a male dominant world, I wish I would have said sorry less.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a pretty good mic drop moment, I think.
So, any more questions? Don't forget your name.
Leslie, and again, amazing work, both of you. I think your collaboration and your love is very evident. But Jane, you mentioned that you wanted to stay away from animation, but after Two Eyed Samurai, have you even both like live action and animation?
It really depends on what Hollywood wants to give me, because it depends on your next job. But if there were more live action animation and these types of stories to be told, I could see myself staying in animation because these are the type of stories I like telling. But how long it takes an animated series to get up drives me nuts because I'm so used to the live action. We go out there, grab the camera, shoot it, like 6 months later we're done. But like Blue Eye Samurai first season took 4 years. That's too long.
I think what you've shown is that you're interested in fashion, martial arts, and then just understanding motion and story. You're already directing. If the first line is they fight and you already are visualizing the whole scene, then you're the director and the concept artist and the fashion effect, like the wardrobe, right?
Yeah, but don't say that in front of the director.
For example, right now. Oh yeah. Right now, there's a show that Jane is maybe being offered. It's a live action show, and we're having to hear why they're hesitant. It's because they don't see what you just saw, and they're worried there's some kind of magic thing that a director does that she hasn't experienced doing yet. But she's so clearly showing all the skills that will be called upon. Until the actors won't block the way you want them to. That's,
We deal that was called storyboard artists.
they won't do what you want.
Sometimes they don't. Where's John?
Very accusatory.
Well, and I love that, and I think that's why I pinpointed out this idea of understanding the camera, where the POV is, how it's swinging, because that is also its own language.
What's funny is when I got into the business, I didn't know when to cut for a close. All I knew was how to draw. I didn't know when to cut for a close-up. I didn't know what to do with the camera, and I gave myself 1 summer to learn this, and if I couldn't learn it, I was going to go back to fashion, because what the hell was I trying to do storyboarding this? And I did it.
You still want to do something very personal. Is there something that you are working on together?
We did.
But also your name.
Oh, Katerina, Rosa Li, what's happening?
Yes and yes. There's something I want to do. It's sort of just my story, but Jane and I did have collaborated on one project, and it is very much a partnership because it was her idea that she wanted to do something in this world, and then my contribution was saying that sounds boring. And then she found an actual story in that world, and I got very excited about the story she found. And this evolved into something called Gold Mountain, which is Michelle Yeoh has said she wants to play the lead, and it grows out of Jane's desire to tell stories about the immigrant experience. It's set in the gold rush. The main character is a woman who's hard as nails, sort of caught up in the bride trade that was booming during the early gold rush. So in that way, it's personal to both of us that we built the story. It's very collaborative, but it's
Too expensive.
that's the problem. It's we're working on a draft now that brings the budget way down. But it's not like my lived experience or Jane's lived experience, but it's something that means a lot to both of us.
The clash of cultures.
The clash of cultures that we experience every day, and the sense of humor in it is something that means a lot to me. And again, it's a Western sort of.
Yes, it is a Western, yeah.
Yeah. But I think in the end, we both have a lot of respect for each other in our skill sets, and I love watching him work because I have such a talent crush on him.
Okay, so that's.
Yeah, beat that. Beat that.
No, clear the air a little mushy, don't you think? Yeah.
It is just as ooey gooey mushy as you think it is up here. It's great. I think we have time for one or two more questions. One more question, says Patrick. Any?
Well, we
Any?
have
Nine?
two,
No.
so.
You know what? Ask it fast.
Okay, you both deal with very high pressure situations as creatives. How do you maintain the lax as creatives when you're stressed and high pressure?
I'm constantly stressed.
No, it's funny. It's a funny thing because I think stress is. I sort of enjoy stress. I like the. That's one thing I like about live action is the sort of insane adrenaline shape of the whole enterprise. It's not like 4 years to make a season or something. It's oh my god, it's raining and we're screwed and let's the camera's broken. I sort of like all that stuff. I weirdly have been told by people on set that I seem very calm, which is the strangest thing in the
The
world.
secret is if he's on set and he starts whistling, that's him stressing out.
But inside I'm screaming, but on the outside it's like
Whistling.
I tend to whistle.
But I know you both like have hobbies and things that keep you centered, right? I hear there's like a farmer Alan.
Yes.
Sort of not very successful
He loves
farmer Alan.
mowing.
Jane, what's your thing? Give swords.
Yeah, I used
Wait,
to.
do you collect swords?
Oh, she bakes bread.
There we go. We have Farmer Alan and Baker Jane.
And both of them are really wonderful because they are the opposite of the kind of stress stuff you're talking about.
I used to just like drawing my sketchbook to relax, and he said that's a best.
Busman's holiday.
Yeah. So I had to stop drawing my sketchbook and learn how to bake instead.
I love this. All right. Last question. You got
Make
it.
it good.
And who are you, sir?
I'm Stefan.
Hi, Stefan.
Hello. And I have a background in the animation industry and some live action. So you talked a lot about things taking too long in animation, which I agree with, and budgets being too high in live action, which I agree with. I think there's a lot of technological solutions coming along or already here that can help fix that. Not just AI, but I think motion capture and things that we had been working on to try to accelerate the animation process in particular and to bring down some of the live action costs. What do you think in your work are the obstacles that are creating things still taking too long and still being too expensive? Is it people, is it lack of technology knowledge, or is it the process of executives making decisions that's making things too expensive and too lengthy?
That's really interesting because I love process questions, and Netflix actually has been a really good partner when they said, yeah, do whatever you want. So the process that we have on Blue Eye Samurai is as stripped down as you can get it. But I think we have to be responsible and careful about how we use AI and how we use these processes as a tool and not to take over creative jobs and the spontaneity that we need. So I think right now it's taking long because we're still in that process of trying to find where it lands. So I think everybody's kind of scared on knowing how to utilize that correctly. So I do think animation itself, when you make those flip books in the 8th grade, it takes a long time to draw every single thing, right? In essence, that's still what we're dealing with. We're still drawing, we still have to make decisions on every single damn frame. That's what's taking long. You're still counting 24 frames per second. So I don't know how to get around that. And I'm not sure motion capture is going to answer that. I do think that helps in certain degree. But how do you do layout faster? You can't. How do you do, like you said, you could do animation faster, but then how do you keep these decisions, how you design, it still takes a long time. We'd love to just talk to you about that because it's something I need to solve.
Well, on that note, I would love, because I'm sure everyone is curious, can y'all give us a little preview of what you can talk about that you're currently working on?
I'm indentured to her for Blue Eye Samurai for a few more months.
Again, congratulations.
there are, like I said, there's two features I'm trying to get made, and it's in that usual game of trying to find the cast that will make them financially, viable. And there's a pilot that I think, the live action pilot that I might be doing that I'm not at liberty to talk about, but it's to take place in New York, which is one of my, one of the things I look for, chances to work in New York. So yeah, that's.
I mean, I think that was a safe way of skirting around. Well done.
Other than season 2 of Blue Eye Samurai that I have to finish, I have a story that sort of got a grant from Taiwan suddenly. So I actually have to do that. And I'm really excited about telling a story and shooting in my home land.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
And we do try to collaborate whenever we can. There's nothing really for me to do on this one. So she recently said, well, you can be executive producer. It was like a sort of like a pretend title.
No. That's why you have to read my synopsis and give me notes.
Okay.
Well played. I would love for everyone to give another round of applause. And